Hello everybody and welcome to this video on me talking about my first 18 or so hours in The Last of Us Part 2. Now, I'm going to get this out of the way very quickly. This game has got a lot of hate recently, a lot of more because of the leaks that have come out, and people were unhappy with certain story elements that have kind of occurred early on in the game, and kind of the way that they've told certain stories and the way that they've kind of toyed with their character progression and their character story itself. Now, from my perspective, I think some of these people really need to get their own perspective on it, because some people are actually boycotting The Last of Us Part 2 because of this, which I just don't understand. I mean, yes, the ending was leaked. Yes, a big story leak happened quite early on in the game, and people are now boycotting it because of this. This game for me is not about the end. This game is massively about the journey. You know, the journey that you go on as Ellie and all the other characters that you kind of, interact with. It's a very interesting and interactive game. And I mean, from what you're seeing on screen right now, these are stream highlights, but even at 720, this looks amazing. I mean, the visuals are fantastic. The textures are just so beautiful and crisp. And you know what? How fast-paced and action-packed the entire game can be at times. It is really interesting to see how the developers themselves have actually gone about some of this. I mean, currently right now you're seeing quite an early-on sequence of the kind of throwing a bottle and then striking an enemy and so on and stuff like that. The game itself is very focused on its storytelling mechanics. It's very focused on how it kind of, shows you that character's perspective and everything like that. But when it turns it on and suddenly the sequences get very fast paced and very action packed, it turns it on so very well. And you do have that complete sense of fear and just absolute terror when you're being screamed at by a clicker that's running at you at 100 miles an hour. It's so much fun to kind of experience this after The Last of Us Part 1. Now, don't get me wrong, The Last of Us Part 1 was a masterpiece. I think it was one of the best games I ever played. If you've watched some of the podcasts, I believe it was episode 3, in which we did the games of the decade, Last of Us Part 1 was up there as one of my games of the decade. And you know what? I feel like The Last of Us Part 2 does a very good job on bringing some of that elements of that game back from The Last of Us Part 1. And it does it really well. I mean, just down to the kind of upgrading mechanic that you're about to see now on the video. It is very focused on, what it was beforehand. It was very focused on the gun upgrades, the character upgrades, which all make a good return. Except for this time, with the gun upgrades, there's a really satisfying animation for each gun. You can really get a good feel of the kind of cocking motion, the sound of a bullet that kind of drops just to the left of you, to the side of you if it's been chambered, and that's not always consistent. If you don't have a bullet chambered, you will not get that animation, which I just think is really great detail that the devs have gone into to try and produce The Last of Us Part 2. Now, throughout the entire game, there are really in-depth and interesting story techniques that they use, and you get a real sense of a relationship with those characters. There's many sequences throughout the game in which Ellie's playing the guitar for somebody, even down to some of the characters that you may not have met before. You're kind of roaming around as Ellie with your friend Dina, and Dina's a very interesting character, and the more and more that she talks about her past, the more and more interesting I was getting involved into her as a character. And there's so much character development in the game itself, and it's so interesting and important to see that really boycotting it because one part of the story is not going to tell you the entire story. It really is not. And I think the best way to properly experience this as not just a game, again, it feels like an interactive movie, as did the first one. You need your own opinion on this game. Just having a look at what a reviewer has put, or having a look at what others may think about the game or anything like that. Even to me now, just explaining it, don't take all of my opinions and so on to heart if you don't agree with them. Personally, I think it is a fantastic game, and I think Naughty Dog have done a fantastic job at displaying it, just down to the gameplay mechanics, to the kind of survival horror elements that was so fantastic in the first game. It brings all of that in, and it still has that there. And boycotting it because of a story decision that was made, just one or two things that have been leaked, really don't allow you to grasp the entire game itself. And the only way to do that is to watch it or play it yourself. It's a lot of game. Is it worth full price? Yeah, I'm not disappointed with it in any way, shape or form. I don't even think I'm halfway through it yet, and I've already sunk, well over 15 hours into it. It's a fantastic game that really, I think a lot of people have just decided to throw to one side because of what some people have done. So in terms of the game itself, it, like I said before, it just feels so much like Last of Us Part 1 in terms of kind of the story elements and how it plays out. And as you can see by some of this footage as well, it's absolutely terrifying at parts. I mean, there are just clickers running at you constantly, and even the regular runners themselves, when they get a hold of you and just start trying to, obviously get to you, a lot of that is terrifying. It's really enjoyable to play and to kind of experience this situation as well. I mean, just down to the combat. The combat, whilst it feels similar, it also feels nice and fluid. And it has, some elements brought back from the previous game, but a really interesting and intricate couple of new kind of styles of doing it. Of course, you play as Ellie, not Joel, who is a lot more agile. So, in order to compensate for that, there's more dodging that's involved. Your punches will most probably do less damage than what you would have experienced with the likes of Joel. And I think those smaller details, and not just rehashing the combat system from the old game, I think that is what makes this game so good. Personally, as of right at this stage, I would give it a solid 8 out of 10. But of course, I'm still playing it. I've not completed it yet. That may change. But other than that, guys, I really hope that you've enjoyed this video and can hopefully, maybe give it a shot if you thought you weren't going to, or just let me know what you thought of the game in the comments down below, if you enjoyed it, or what else you think they could have improved on. But again, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.